1953, a row house in Homestead, Pennsylvania, in the orange glow of a mill that never goes dark. A first helper named Johnny Varga comes off the night turn, scrubs the iron and sulfur from his arms, and sets his dented lunch bucket by the door. His son watches. Johnny never speaks of the man the open hearth took last spring. These are 25 rules he lived by and rarely spoke, and number 1 is why he carried that bucket at all. Stay to the end.
This is number 25. Watch your partner. A Youngstown open hearth man named Casey Wojciech taught his sons that the mill never forgives 2 mistakes at once. During a slag boil, a distracted man could get the man beside him killed. You kept one eye on your work and one on his. The watching costs nothing. The absence of it costs 2 men instead of 1.
This is number 24. Pull your turn. A Lackawanna second helper named Vasil Baron had no patience for the man who didn't carry his share. When one slacked, the whole gang worked harder, or the heat ran long. You did your part, every turn. The effort cost him his ease. The absence of it costs a crew its trust.
This is number 23. Respect the craft. A Gary melter named Andras Horvath could read a heat by the color of the flame and call the tap by eye. Knowledge that took 20 years and couldn't be shortcut. He taught his son that real skill is quiet and earned. The craft cost him half a life to learn. The absence of that respect costs a trade its meaning.
This is number 22. The signal is law. A Braddock crane operator named Leon Kowalski moved ladles of molten steel over men's heads, and the hand signals from the floor were life and death, never guessed, never improvised. 1 wrong move and 3 men died. It cost a moment's patience. The absence of it costs lives that don't come back.
This is number 21. Never clock in impaired. A Bethlehem furnace man named Milo Cernak held one rule absolute. You never came onto the floor drunk, because the man beside you trusted his life to your hands. A careless man was a loaded gun. The discipline cost him a few nights out. The absence of it costs the man who trusted you.
If what you are about to hear sounds familiar, if your father taught you any of this, or if you wish he had, we have collected 10 of the most important of these lessons into a small book called The Forgotten Father Code, 10 timeless lessons American dads taught their sons. The link is in the description. It will outlast the man who reads it. Hit subscribe. Know your seniority number. An Aliquippa ladle man named Stefan Petrovich knew his date of hire by heart, because under the contract, it governed everything. Who worked when the mill slowed? Who got called back first after a layoff? In a decade when 1/4 of American workers carried a union card, your number was a place no boss could take. The absence of it cost a man his standing.
This is number 19. Don't show the company your pain. A Clairton coke oven man named Giovanni Messina worked the most punishing job in the complex and never let the company doctor see more than the law required. A man who complained too much got marked as finished. The stoicism wasn't pride, it was survival. The absence of it costs a man his job before his time.
This is number 18. Take it to the union, not the foreman. A McKeesport roller named Joseph Kubik taught his son the difference. The foreman was the company's man. The grievance steward was yours. A man who whined to the boss lost twice. A man who knew the contract protected his rights. The absence of it costs him every fight he didn't have to lose. This is number 17. Never cross a picket line. Not for any reason, not for any man. A Gary millwright named Miklos Sabo walked the line through the whole of 1959 when 519,000 steelworkers struck for 116 days. Families who crossed were never forgiven. You held the line. It cost him 116 days' pay. The absence of it costs a man his name in the only town he had. This is number 16. The union makes the mill everyone's. A Birmingham labor gang man named Luther Washington was kept off the skilled jobs by the color line, the hard truth of a southern mill. But the United Steelworkers, founded in 1942 to organize every man, regardless of creed, color, or nationality, counted him an equal. It was imperfect and all he had. The card cost him his dues. The absence of it costs a man every protection he's got.
This is number 15.
Learn before you touch the control. A South Chicago man named Manuel Reyes started on the labor gang and watched the skilled men for years before he reached for a lever. The junior man who second-guessed the melter broke the rhythm of the heat. You earned your place by watching first. The patience cost him his pride. The absence of it costs a green man his hand.
This is number 14. Respect the men who came before. The Union was bought in blood. Every father in Homestead knew the story of 1892, when Carnegie's men and the Pinkertons turned the river red and the Union was crushed for 40 years. The 8-hour day, the seniority list, the pension, none of it was given. It was paid for by men who lost. The absence of that memory costs a man the rights he forgets he inherited.
This is number 13, the hinge the whole list turns on, the mill's price. When the open hearth took a man, a slag explosion, a failed ladle, the whistle blew, the parish said the funeral mass, and the union hall passed the hat for the widow that week. The men did not speak of the danger. It was known and absorbed. And here the list turns. Everything so far was the code of the furnace floor. The next 12 are about the row house behind it, the table, the garden, the church, the children. The mill could use a man up. What he built at home, it could never take. Number 1 is the reason for all of it. Stay with me.
This is number 12. Provide. That is the whole job description. A McKeesport roller named Pavel Marek measured himself by one thing, that his family never went without and never depended on anyone. Not wealth, never dependency. The provision cost him his body by 60. The absence of it costs a family its floor.
This is number 11. The pay envelope comes home whole. A Youngstown man named Andre Lucas handed his wife the entire check every payday and took back a few dollars for himself, the way half the Slovak and Polish households in the valley ran. The money was the family's, not the man's. The trust cost him his pride of pocket. The absence of it costs a marriage its foundation.
This is number 10. Save for the layoff. It will come. A Duquesne furnace man named Peter Novak had lived through the Depression and never trusted a good year to last. Steel was cyclical, and the slow seasons always returned. The man who put something by had choices. The man who didn't went into debt. The absence of it costs a family its dignity when the mill goes cold.
This is number 9. Never owe a man what you cannot pay. A Johnstown melter named Imre Balog had crossed an ocean with nothing and rebuilt from zero, and taught his sons that debt was a shame that transferred to your children. You paid cash and paid it back the same week. The thrift cost him things he wanted. The absence of it costs a son his father's good name.
This is number 8. The church gets its hour before the bar gets its evening. An Aliquippa man named Stefan Petrovich kept the order sacred. Sunday Mass at the Croatian parish, then the family table, and only then the tavern by the mill gate. A man who skipped it was noticed. The hour cost him a morning's sleep. The absence of it costs a community its center.
This is number 7. Your garden is not a hobby, it is insurance. A McKeesport man named Stevan Markovich worked a furnace all week and a row house garden all weekend. Tomatoes, peppers, beans, garlic, put up in jars by August. When the layoff came, the cellar was full. The garden cost him his Sundays. The absence of it costs a family its cushion against the lean year.
This is number 6. Keep your troubles at the gate. A Homestead man named Tomas Hudak left the heat, the foreman, and the danger at the mill gate and did not carry them through his front door. Whatever the turn had done to him, his children met a steady man. The restraint cost him a place to put his anger. The absence of it cost children the safety of their own home.
This is number 5. Your kids go to school. No early mill jobs. A Clareton man named Giovanni Messina, who had no schooling and no choice, made the message absolute. You will not do what I do. The union even bargained tuition help into the contract. The diploma was the way out of the heat, and he wouldn't let his sons trade it for a paycheck at 17. The absence of that push costs a child the only exit there was.
This is number 4. You speak the old language at home,
and English everywhere else. A Makisport man named Lajos Toth spoke Hungarian at his own table, where the grandparents sat, and English at the mill and the bank. The mother tongue held the family together. English was for getting ahead. A man could belong to two worlds without betraying either. The absence of it costs a family the thread back to where it came from.
This is number 3. When you put on that suit on Sunday, you are not a furnace man. You are a citizen. A man who spent 6 days in the heat pressed a single good suit and wore it to church and every wake, standing straight. The suit was a claim the mill could not touch, that he was more than what he did for a wage. The absence of it costs a man the dignity he refused to surrender.
This is number 2. You will not do what I do, but if you do, you will do it well. Every steelworker father carried both, the dream that his son would take the diploma and never feel the heat, and the fierce private pride if the boy came onto the floor and proved himself. He pushed his sons toward the door and stood taller if they chose the mill anyway. The absence of it costs a son either a future or a father's blessing.
This is number 1. Go back to that kitchen in Homestead. Johnny Varga carried that dented lunch bucket into 3,000 degrees of heat, turn after turn, year after year, and never once said it was hard. He did it for one reason, so his son would carry a school book instead of a bucket. Or, if the boy chose the mill, that he'd choose it free, not because there was nothing else. He spent his body so his children would have a choice he never had. That was the code. Every rule here came off the same furnace floor. Men who made the steel that built the American century and asked only for a fair turn. Then the mills went cold. On a single Monday in 1977, Youngstown lost 5,000 jobs. Within a few years, the valley lost 50,000, and a workforce of 500,000 steelworkers fell to barely 80,000. The union halls emptied, and the orange glow went dark. The rules were never about the mill. They were about what the mill was for. We have collected 10 of these lessons, the ones every American father, of every neighborhood and every name, used to give his son, into a small book called The Forgotten Father Code. 10 timeless lessons American dads taught their sons. 10 chapters. Vintage-inspired design. Instant download. The link is in the description below this video and pinned in the comments. We made it for the man who watched this whole video and recognized something he had not heard in a long time. We made it for the father who wants to give his son something to hold. Pick one of these 25. Pick it tonight. Do it once this week and tell your kids why. That is how these rules were ever passed down. Not by speaking them, but by living them until they were too obvious to forget.